Or today I want to speak about something many people experience but few talk about: silence. Not the peaceful kind that calms your mind, but the kind that happens when communication stops, when someone pulls away, when a voice you used to hear goes quiet, and more specifically, what happens when you go silent in a woman's mind. Silence is often mistaken for peace, for control, or for a neutral state of being. But in human relationships, especially close emotional ones, silence is rarely neutral. It has weight, meaning, and consequence. When someone chooses to go silent, whether intentionally or not, it doesn't create stillness in the other person. It creates noise, uncertainty, and often a storm of thoughts. For women in particular, silence doesn't feel like space. It feels like distance. And that distance becomes filled with questions, assumptions, and self-blame. In a world where communication is everything, silence can be deafening. When someone who was once consistent in conversation suddenly withdraws without explanation, the quiet doesn't feel calm, it feels like tension, it feels like punishment, and more than that, it feels like rejection. What most people fail to understand is that when you stop talking, when you stop expressing, it doesn't send no message, it sends 1,000, and rarely the one you intend. Women, by nature and by social conditioning, are taught to be aware of emotional shifts. They notice tone, body language, response time, and subtle changes in behavior. This isn't insecurity, it's awareness, it's relational intelligence. So when silence enters a dynamic where there used to be interaction, their minds don't go quiet, they start working overtime. They fill in the blanks. They ask themselves, what changed? Did I say something wrong? Is he upset? Is he no longer interested? And because there's no clarity, the mind creates its own narrative. That narrative is rarely positive. Silence makes space, yes, but that space quickly fills with doubt. It forces the other person to carry the weight of two conversations, the real one that's no longer happening, and the imagined one they now have to construct on their own. The result: emotional exhaustion, emotional confusion, and most often, emotional hurt. To the one choosing silence, it may feel like self-protection. It may feel like a way to avoid conflict, to process privately, or to retreat when overwhelmed. But without communication, that silence becomes a weapon, unintentionally or not. It's like turning off the lights and expecting the other person to keep walking forward without stumbling. You don't need to say anything cruel for silence to become cruel. You just need to say nothing at all. The truth is, silence can carry more emotional damage than words. Words can be corrected. Misunderstandings can be cleared up, but silence leaves no evidence, no closure, and no resolution. It lingers, it haunts, and for someone who genuinely cares, it creates a fear that they are no longer worthy of communication, of attention, of presence. What many don't realize is that silence also erodes trust. When someone consistently chooses not to communicate, it sends the message, you don't deserve an explanation, or worse, you're not important enough for my words. Over time, this can create emotional distance that is hard to recover from, even if words eventually return, because by then, the silence has already spoken volumes. So no, silence is not neutral. It is charged with meaning. It is a message in itself, often received more loudly than spoken words. And if we are not careful with our silence, we risk sending the wrong message to the right person. We risk making someone feel small, invisible, or unwanted when all we really needed to do was speak. In relationships, romantic, platonic, or otherwise, communication is not optional, it's the thread that holds connection together. Even when we're unsure of what to say, saying something is almost always better than saying nothing. Because silence might feel safe for a moment, but it rarely feels safe to the person on the other side of it. Women process deeply, not because they are overly emotional or fragile, but because they are naturally intuitive, emotionally intelligent, and socially conditioned to pay attention to the nuances of human behavior. From an early age, many women are taught, both directly and indirectly, to read between the lines. or they learn to interpret body language, tone of voice, timing, and the energy behind words. This heightened awareness becomes second nature, or it's not overthinking, it's observing, connecting, and protecting themselves through understanding. When a woman is emotionally invested in someone, or her mind doesn't just hear the words that are said, she hears the words left unspoken. She notices the delays in response, the slight shift in tone, or the different choice of words, or the emotional undercurrent in a conversation. She's paying attention not only to what is being said, but also to what is being felt. And when something doesn't align, her mind gets to work. She doesn't want to create problems. She's trying to prevent them. Her processing is a way of caring, or of staying connected, and of making sense of things that feel uncertain. This depth of processing is often misunderstood, or some people label it as overreacting or reading too much into things. But that misses the point entirely. Or women don't analyze situations because they enjoy drama or because they're looking for problems. They do it because they are wired to connect emotionally. Or relationships are not surface level to them. They are rooted in emotional presence, consistency, and clarity. So when something changes, even subtly, they feel it. And when communication disappears or shifts without explanation, they naturally begin to fill in the blanks. This is not a sign of weakness, or it's a sign of sensitivity and intelligence. It's the mind working to protect the heart. When clarity isn't offered, the mind begins to create meaning. That meaning might not be accurate, but it feels real, because in the absence of clear communication, assumptions are all that's left. She might wonder what she did wrong. Or she might start to question her worth, not because she lacks confidence, but because connection matters to her. When someone she cares about pulls away or goes silent, or her mind doesn't just move on, it tries to understand. And that process can be mentally and emotionally draining. Deep processing also comes from a place of empathy, or women often try to see things from the other person's perspective. They consider what the other might be going through. They reflect on their own words and actions, or trying to piece together what may have caused a shift. This mental effort is not always visible, but it's there, quietly working in the background, fueled by care, love, or concern. When communication is clear and consistent, her processing can rest. But when it's absent or confusing, her mind can't help but search for answers. The truth is, women want to feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. Safety doesn't come from grand gestures or constant reassurance. It comes from honesty, consistency, and communication. When she knows where she stands, her mind can relax. When she feels heard and seen, she doesn't need to analyze every detail. But when things are left unsaid, when energy changes without context, her mind doesn't quiet. It starts racing. This deep processing isn't a flaw, it's a strength. It means she's emotionally invested. It means she's trying to understand, not accuse. It means she's aware, not naive. And most importantly, it means she cares. So instead of dismissing a woman's thoughtful analysis as overthinking, it's time to understand it for what it really is: an effort to connect, or to protect her emotional well-being, and to keep the relationship strong. That kind of depth isn't something to fear or criticize. It's something to respect. Silence, or in the context of a relationship or emotional connection, can feel like one of the most painful forms of punishment. It is not always loud or dramatic, but its impact can be deeply wounding. When someone chooses silence over communication, especially during moments of tension, misunderstanding, or emotional vulnerability, it doesn't come across as neutrality. It feels like being shut out. For many women, this silence isn't just a pause in conversation, it feels like abandonment, rejection, and punishment all rolled into one. When a woman reaches out emotionally, she is not just looking for answers, she is looking for reassurance, clarity, and connection. If she is met with silence, it communicates more than just a lack of response. or it suggests that her emotions are too much, that her voice doesn't matter, or that she no longer holds the same space in the other person's life. Or whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, or a family member, being met with silence can be deeply unsettling. It creates emotional confusion, or making her question not just the situation, but her own worth and importance in the relationship. Unlike a heated argument or a difficult conversation, where at the very least, or things are being expressed, silence offers nothing. It gives no closure, no context, no explanation. It leaves a woman to sit with her own thoughts, her own questions, and her own fears without any form of grounding. This kind of emotional limbo can be far more damaging than a direct conversation, no matter how hard that conversation might be. Or it feels like a door being quietly closed in her face with no warning and no key to open it again. Or what makes silence particularly punishing is that it denies the other person a chance to participate in resolving the issue. It removes their agency. Or instead of working through the problem together, they are left in the dark, expected to wait, guess, or simply accept the disconnect without understanding it. Or this kind of emotional isolation can cause deep anxiety, especially for someone who values communication and connection. When there is no dialogue, or the mind fills the gap with worst-case scenarios, she begins to wonder if she's too much, if she's being punished for expressing herself, or if her presence is no longer wanted at all. Furthermore, silence during conflict or tension creates a power imbalance, or the person who withdraws into silence often holds the control, while the other is left scrambling to understand, fix, or reconcile without knowing what's truly wrong. Or this dynamic is painful and disempowering. It teaches the silent recipient that expressing themselves leads to emotional exile over time, or it can cause them to suppress their needs, fearing that speaking up will only push the other person further away. Or it's important to understand that silence isn't always intentional cruelty. Sometimes people go quiet because they don't know what to say, they need time, or they feel overwhelmed. But when this silence becomes a repeated pattern, especially during emotionally charged moments, it becomes harmful. Or it's one thing to ask for space with clear communication. It's another to disappear emotionally and leave the other person drowning in uncertainty. Women, in particular, tend to seek emotional resolution. They want to understand, to connect, to heal. When silence is used instead of communication, it blocks that healing process. Or it doesn't soothe wounds, it deepens them. And the longer the silence lasts, the harder it becomes to bridge the gap. Or what was once a simple misunderstanding can grow into a lasting wound because the silence allowed it to fester, unchecked and unresolved. In the end, or silence may feel like a way to avoid conflict or protect oneself, but to the person on the receiving end, especially a woman who values connection, it feels like punishment, or not a physical one, but an emotional exile that leaves her alone with all the questions and none of the answers. And that kind of punishment doesn't just hurt in the moment, or it lingers. Communication is the foundation of emotional safety in any relationship. It creates a space where people can be seen, heard, and understood. For women especially, or communication is not just about exchanging words. It's about building trust, connection, and emotional stability. When a woman feels emotionally safe, or she can be her full self without fear of being judged, dismissed, or abandoned, that safety doesn't come from grand gestures or surface-level conversations, or it comes from consistent, open, and honest communication, especially in moments of tension, uncertainty, or emotional vulnerability. Or emotional safety allows a woman to express her feelings without fear that they'll be used against her later. It reassures her that even when things get hard, or the connection is still valued and worth protecting. Communication is how that safety is built, moment by moment, word by word. Or when someone chooses to engage rather than shut down, to clarify rather than assume, and to explain rather than withdraw, they're showing that the relationship is a priority. Or that message is more powerful than any apology or romantic gesture. It says, "You matter and your emotions are safe with me." When there is no communication, or emotional safety begins to erode, silence, avoidance, or vague responses can make someone feel emotionally unsafe. Without clear communication, or women are left to guess what's going on, what someone is feeling, or where they stand. This guessing game creates anxiety, or it forces the mind to create stories in the absence of truth, and those stories are often rooted in fear. Or emotional safety disappears when someone doesn't feel they can ask questions, express concerns, or talk through issues without being met with frustration, defensiveness, or indifference. Clear communication doesn't mean always having the right words or knowing exactly what to say. It simply means showing up and trying, or it means saying things like, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, but it's not about you. Or, I need a little time to process this. Or, but I still care about us. These simple, honest statements do more than fill silence. They keep connection alive, or they help the other person feel included in what's happening rather than shut out. For women, being emotionally included in the process is what builds lasting trust. Or communication also builds emotional safety by making room for difficult conversations. When someone can say, or, I didn't like how that made me feel, or I need more support from you, and be met with openness instead of defensiveness. Or it creates a relationship where growth can happen. Emotional safety doesn't mean there are never conflicts. It means that when conflicts happen, or both people feel secure enough to work through them without fearing emotional abandonment or retaliation. Or the quality of communication in a relationship directly affects the emotional climate. Consistent, honest communication creates warmth, openness, and stability. Or, on the other hand, inconsistent or avoidant communication breeds insecurity, distance, and emotional volatility. Or many women will try to communicate first. They'll ask questions, express feeling, and seek clarity. But if they are met repeatedly with silence or emotional shutdown, or they will begin to retreat, not because they stopped caring, but because they no longer feel safe trying. Communication is not just a skill, it's a responsibility. Or it is how we tell the people in our lives, you're safe here. You can feel what you feel, say what you need to say, and I will still be here, or willing to listen. That message, delivered consistently, creates a foundation where real intimacy can grow. Without it, even the strongest connection can begin to break down. Or emotional safety is not built overnight. It's built every time you choose to talk instead of shut down, clarify instead of assume, and stay present instead of pulling away. Or for women, who often carry the emotional weight of relationships, these moments of communication are not small. They are everything. In relationships, or what people crave most is not perfection, it's presence. Being present means showing up emotionally, mentally, and physically, even when things are messy, uncertain, or difficult. For women especially, presence is far more meaningful than flawless words, grand gestures, or perfectly executed plans. Or it's not about always saying the right thing or never making mistakes. It's about being there, truly there, when it matters most. Perfection is an illusion, or no one can get it right all the time. There will be misunderstandings, disagreements, and moments where emotions run high. But in those moments, or what makes the difference is whether someone chooses to lean in or pull away. Present says, I care enough to sit with you in this discomfort. It says, or even if I don't know what to say, or I'm not going to disappear. That level of emotional availability builds more trust and connection than any perfectly worded message ever could. Or women don't expect their partners, friends, or loved ones to be mind readers or emotional experts. What they want is consistency, reliability, or someone who won't run when things get hard. Presence is what creates the emotional safety that allows a woman to be open and vulnerable. Or it's what helps her feel seen and supported, even when she's not at her best. It's what gives her the courage to express her needs and fears, or knowing she won't be met with silence, frustration, or withdrawal. The pursuit of perfection often leads to emotional distance, or people become afraid to speak up because they don't want to say the wrong thing. They avoid hard conversations because they fear they'll mess it up. But in doing so, or they become absent, emotionally unavailable, and that absence is far more damaging than any imperfect words could ever be. Or what women often remember most is not whether someone always said the right thing, but whether that person stayed emotionally present during the wrong moments. or being present doesn't require deep wisdom or elaborate advice. Sometimes it just means listening, really listening. It means asking, do you want me to help? Or just hear you out. It means staying calm when the other person is overwhelmed. It means offering a hand to hold, a shoulder to lean on, or a few words of reassurance that say, you're not alone. That presence, even in silence, carries more comfort than forced perfection ever could. Or presence also means being consistent in the small moments, responding to messages, checking in, following through on your word. These things may seem simple, but they show care or reliability and commitment. They let a woman know that she matters, not just when it's convenient or easy, but all the time. These acts of presence, repeated over time, or build emotional trust brick by brick. Trying to be perfect often backfires. It creates pressure, distance, and the fear of failure. But presence is about showing up honestly, or it says, I may not have all the answers, but I'm here. That kind of emotional availability is rare and incredibly powerful, or it allows real intimacy to develop because it's rooted in truth, not performance. Women don't want a flawless partner, they want a real one, or someone who's willing to have the tough talks, someone who can admit when they're wrong, or someone who can stay grounded during emotional moments and not run from vulnerability. Someone who chooses to stay, not because everything is perfect, but because the connection is worth it. In the end, presence is love in action. It's the decision to engage, to witness, and to support, or even when you don't have the perfect words or the perfect plan. It's not about never making mistakes. It's about never making someone feel alone in their experience. Or presence says, you matter, and when that message is delivered consistently, no perfection is needed. Silence is often misunderstood, or some people believe that saying nothing is safer than saying the wrong thing. Others use silence as a way to avoid conflict, protect their own emotions, or buy time to think. But in relationships, especially emotionally intimate ones, silence rarely feels neutral or protective. Instead, it sends a powerful and often painful message, or even if that message is not what the silent person intended. In fact, silence often communicates the wrong message entirely, creating more confusion, hurt, and distance than any spoken words could. When someone goes silent, especially during an emotional moment, it's rarely interpreted as, I just need time, or I'm thinking. It's interpreted as, you're not worth my words, or I'm punishing you. Silence can feel like abandonment, or it can feel like rejection. It sends the message that the other person doesn't deserve clarity, doesn't deserve a response, or isn't important enough to be engaged with. And even if that's not the truth, that's how it feels, because when someone goes silent, the other person is left to fill in the blanks with their own fears, insecurities, and assumptions. Women, in particular, tend to be highly attuned to emotional shifts. When someone who was once communicative suddenly withdraws into silence, or their minds don't just go quiet, they start searching for meaning. They replay past conversations, trying to figure out what went wrong. They analyze tone, timing, and context. The absence of communication becomes a puzzle they feel pressured to solve. And in the absence of clear answers, the mind often assumes the worst. What makes silence so dangerous in emotional situations is that it leaves the other person completely alone with their experience. There's no validation, no context, or no resolution, just emptiness. This lack of response makes the issue feel bigger, more personal, and more hurtful. The silent person might be trying to avoid saying something they'll regret, or they might genuinely not know what to say. But from the other side, it doesn't feel like restraint, it feels like neglect. Silence also carries emotional weight because it removes the possibility of repair. With words, even difficult ones, there is always a chance to explain, clarify, apologize, or connect. But silence offers no such opportunity. It's a closed door, and when that door stays shut for too long, it can permanently damage trust. The silent person may not intend harm, but the effect of their silence can be deeply damaging, especially over time. Even worse, repeated silence can condition someone to suppress their own needs and emotions. If a woman learns that expressing herself leads to silence, or she may begin to internalize the belief that her feelings are too much or that she doesn't deserve a response. This not only affects her sense of self-worth, but also creates a toxic dynamic in the relationship where open communication feels unsafe or unproductive. The reality is silence doesn't erase problems, it amplifies them, or it allows misunderstandings to grow, pain to deepen, and distance to form. What could have been a simple conversation becomes a heavy emotional burden, or simply because nothing was said. In most cases, even imperfect communication is better than silence. Saying, I don't know how to talk about this yet, or I need a little time, but I care, keeps the connection alive, or it reassures the other person that the relationship still matters, even in moments of tension. In the end, silence might seem like the easier route, but it's often the more harmful one. It rarely communicates what you truly feel or intend. Instead, it leaves room for misinterpretation, anxiety, and emotional withdrawal. Or if connection is the goal, then silence works against it, because in the absence of words, people don't feel peace, they feel distance. And that distance, if left unaddressed, becomes the very thing that pulls relationships apart.